Preparing live stream meeting. My phone on do not disturb. All right. So my phone on do not disturb. Looks like we're live.
Awesome. Good morning. I'm excited to be here with you, Kelly.
I'm excited. I'm hearing feedback though. Looks like we're live.
Yeah, and the feedback I'm hearing is you.
Here with you, Kelly. Let's see. Feedback though.
Yeah, and the feedback I'm hearing is you. Do you have YouTube open in another screen and it's like replaying back? Do you have YouTube open in another screen and it's like replaying back?
Okay, maybe that's better.
All right, we'll try it out.
And I'm gonna hit
Technical difficulties are always fun.
technical difficulties. Yeah. It wouldn't be a new adventure if there wasn't technical difficulties.
Oh, of course. Of course.
So I am Kelly Ballard and my new best friend, Jessica. And how do you say your last name?
It's Sachoka.
Sachoka?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to do that well. It's going to take me a minute.
No worries. It takes people a lot of time. We get a lot of different pronunciations. My poor daughter at school, like nobody says it right.
I dealt with that with my maiden name. So
yeah,
I liked Ballard. It's nice and even and not mispronounced or misspelled very often. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So we are here today to talk about empowering women. And I don't know, Jess, did you think about or realize that when we talked about that it was Women's History Month?
No, I really actually did not put that together.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're in day 3, month 3 of Women's History Month.
Oh, that's awesome. Perfect timing for this conversation then.
So that's what we're going to talk now. Jessica, you're a coach and you are coaching. Tell me who you're coaching. Who's your niche market?
Yeah, so I coach moms. I'm a mom myself, and I spent many years in my previous career just being sort of stuck on I call it like the metaphorical hamster wheel of like, wake up, go to work, do mom stuff, go to bed, like, cycled through. And I really started to feel a disconnect with myself during that time. It was just all the roles and all the jobs, which we're going to dive further into today. And I just kind of reached this point where I'm like, just feeling totally lost, like sort of totally disconnected with my purpose and all those things. And so that is really what I focus on with moms, like really, really diving in and reconnecting with yourself, reconnecting with your purpose, your dreams, the things that you're passionate about. Because I truly feel that once you are solidly reconnected to those things, you're able to show up in all of your different roles, in all of your different areas of life with fulfillment and joy and happiness. So yeah, that's really what we focus on.
Okay. How wonderful. I wish I had someone like like you when I was raising my kids.
You know
Um,
what? I wish I had someone like me even, 5, 7 years ago. And what's really interesting too is we tend to, as coaches, do just that, like help and serve a
right.
certain version of ourselves. So I always find that very interesting too.
So if you could close your eyes and
Hmm.
wave a magic wand and go back 7 years and say something to your younger mom self, what would you say?
Oh, I mean, I feel like a lot of things, but the most important thing is I would tell myself to fill your cup first. Like, really, really prioritize your overall well-being, um, so that you can show up as your best self in all those different areas, for sure.
Well, and it's interesting, we were chatting before we went live, and I was we both kind of had the same idea and the same thought this morning, even though we didn't talk about it beforehand. But I was thinking about how, as women, and maybe it's true for men also, but we're talking about women today, uh, we're judged by the end result.
Mm,
We're judged, the world judges us by the end result, by um, how successful our marriage was, how successful our job was. Uh, we're deemed to be a good mom if, fill in the blanks, your kids grow up and go to college and get a degree.
mm,
And, you know, if you have a child that ends up not doing those things, then you're judged. What did she do wrong? And it's
mm.
not the child having that opportunity to make their own choices. Kind of like goes back on the mom. Oh, what did she do
Yeah.
wrong? And it's kind of like we're sort of held responsible for a whole lot of choices that other people make that we really didn't have control over. But
Yeah.
you know, we're expected to control all these little pieces when they're outside of our control.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that most things in life, like you said, are really driven by that end result. And also our attachment to the result being a certain way, a certain thing, in order for it to be deemed like a success, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
when your 18-year-old daughter says, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to get my bachelor's and my master's degree and then my doctorate, you're like, oh yeah, I did an awesome job. I'm rocking this mom thing. The same daughter comes in a week later and says, well, I changed my mind. I'm going to go travel around the country with my boyfriend. You're like, wait, what?
Mm,
It's like, we're measuring that end result. It's like we take it on. And that's something that's really been a big deal for me recently, is learning how to not take things personally.
yes.
What someone else says or does has absolutely nothing to do with me.
Yes.
And I felt like in our training we got some of that, and I was like, I just I can't really understand or comprehend and believe all that. Um, and I came across this morning. Zig Ziglar said, success means doing the best we can with what we have. Success is the doing, not the getting, and the trying, not the triumph. Success is as a personal standard, reaching for the highest that is in us and becoming all that we can be. And I just felt like that was really powerful to women. And I guess if I could say one thing to the young women that are starting out their careers and their journey as a mom, or not as a mom, just as a career woman, is one, don't take things personally, and don't be attached to that outcome. Show up authentically in a way that really supports you. Which is what you were saying, about not being on that hamster wheel and filling your cup first.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that thought of like focusing more on the being versus the doing,
Right.
and really being present in the process, right? Like every opportunity is, every experience is an opportunity to learn and grow, right? So whether the end result is deemed a success or a failure, there are so many successes along the way because you learn something no matter what. So I think that that's important to remember too. And I think another thing that kind of just came up for me as you were talking, is really being able to stop along the way in that process and recognize those moments. I think as women and moms, and this comes up in my coaching conversations almost always, is stopping and taking the time to celebrate those moments along the way.
Right.
Like, yeah, like whether it be in one of your roles or one of your jobs, whether somebody around you or a boss, deems something as a failure, so to speak, on their end, like really having that evidence along the way of all of the things that you did and you accomplished and you learned, like those are the successes, right?
Yeah. And how often do we, instead of looking at those successes, we just put these blinders on, and all we see is the things that we didn't do, all those roles, if the dishes aren't done, if the carpet's not vacuumed, if the house is dirty, if, there's unanswered emails, if and the list goes on and on. And those are the things that we focus on, instead of just going, you know what, I did the best I could do today.
Yeah. And that's too, like where we get stuck in the doing, right? Like, so we're focusing on all the things that we weren't able to do versus focusing on the things that we were able to do, which is obviously, a great mindset shift if we can focus on the things that we did accomplish and we did do. But we still haven't even addressed there how we're being, how we're showing up. And so that tends to continue to get lost too. So I think really grounding into who you are at your core and how you're showing up in the world and who you're being And I don't mean being like I'm being an executive or I'm being a mom. I'm talking about I'm being happy. I'm being joyful. I'm being patient. That's a big one for me. I'm being present. Um, if you're able to, yes, focus on the things that you are doing versus not doing, but if you can end each day with reflecting on who you were being through that process, whether you got everything done on your to-do list or didn't, like, were you being your authentic self? Like, that's the win.
Right. Okay. So I agree with you 100%. But how is that tainted by all the things that people say to us that we accept as truth about ourselves?
Mm. So I read something recently, and of course, I don't have the book with me at the moment. Um, but I read something recently that really hit home right around that topic. And that was something to the effect of, and it was from the book A Happy Pocket Full of Money by David Cameron Giocondi. And
I'm reading
he's
that book. I'm
yeah,
loving that book.
it's amazing. I'm almost done, and it's one of those books where I think I'll just start over again and read like a passage each day because it was that impactful. Um, but he said something to the effect of, like, if something that somebody says really bothers you or triggers you, it's because a certain part of you believes that it's true.
Right. Yeah.
And that was a heavy moment for me because I'm like thinking back at some of the things that I hold still to this day. Like, I might coach people around these things, but we struggle with them too. And, I started to kind of think about a few things that people have said to me in my past that I am still holding on to some degree. And I really dug into that for a little while and thought, like, why did that bother me? Why does it still bother me? And what part of it did I think was true at the time? And what part of it do I still, to some degree, think is true? Because clearly I'm still holding on to it.
Right. And you hold on to it whether it serves and supports you or not.
Right.
And an example of that, from my life that I just, that I can share was I was, I don't know, probably like 5 or 6 years old. And my dad and I were inseparable. I was just the apple of his eye, or so I thought. That's the way I kind of remember it. But he was a school teacher. And so one morning we were going to summer school. We were pulling a horse trailer, and he had, and I can remember it so vividly. This John Denver was singing "Take Me Home, Country Roads," and I knew that song by heart. And I was singing along to the radio. And he said to me, "You sound like a sick cow when you sing. You
That
can't."
breaks my heart.
I know, right? Well, I stopped. I mean, I was like, who wouldn't, right?
Of course.
I took that personally. And what did I say to you when we first jumped on the call? I had music playing and I had put it on mute because I didn't want to get busted singing.
Oh, yes, you did.
50 years later, that still impacts me. I'm still very self-conscious about singing around people.
Mm.
You know, I mean, so now I love living alone because now I can sing all I want. And you know, but it's like I don't believe for an instant he intended to do something that was going to wound me for 50 years to come.
Mm.
It was something that he said, just who knows? But that was when I learned, and I read the last book I read that was just so powerful for me was The Four Agreements.
Yes.
And one of the principles in that was don't take things personally. When he said that to me, it had nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do with the quality of my voice or my singing or my ability. That was 100% about him and whatever was going on in his mind, in his head at that time. It was all about him. But we don't know those things as little girls and women. We don't know, you know, if, you know, a wife goes to the salon and gets her hair cut and her makeup done, manicure, and her husband comes home and had a bad day at work, and he looks at her and goes, "You look like crap. Why can't you take care of yourself?" You know, it's gonna be devastating.
Of
And
course.
that personally, like, oh, well, maybe I need to find a new hairstylist, and it's not about her. That's about him.
Of course.
You know,
Of course.
but in that moment, and unless you've learned how to not take things personally, we take that on as truth about ourselves, and it impacts and hinders our ability to show up authentically as a person. If we can't show up authentically as a person, how in the world are we going to show up authentically as a mom or a wife, an employee, a business owner, coach, when we have all these things, you know?
Yeah. And as you're talking and telling that story, like, because I'm so like passionate about kind of learning and figuring out like where things come from and how they come to be, I wonder like how early that starts and where that comes from, because here you just shared a story, right, as being a child, and your father made a comment and you took it personally and have carried it for 50 years. But at what age do we start like where do we learn that to take things personally or not take things personally? Like, yeah, I'm just so curious as to when that starts to become like part of our conditioning.
Oh, I think it's immediate. I would say it's at birth. I mean, in the book, The Four Agreements, he talks about the process of domestication.
Yes.
You know, and it's like the rules that our parents have adopted, they impose on us. And it's like they are setting out to destroy our integrity immediately. Forced compliance, bring them under compliance. You have to comply with what mom and or dad think is the way that you should be behaving.
Yeah. Yeah, I can kind of see that now, like, you know, thinking about you know, and I think most moms have been there, you know, numerous times, but I'm thinking back to like when my daughter was an infant and like, there's those moments where they're crying and crying and crying, and you've fed them and changed them and you've done all the things, and you reach a point where you're like frustrated, you don't know what else to do. And I wonder, like, even in that moment, are they feeling that I'm doing something wrong, or like does it even start to become instilled in them, that they're doing something wrong, and start learning that, like, even from then.
Yep.
And of course, on the flip side, we're talking about taking things personally, maybe when we're in that moment and our children are inconsolable and we're getting frustrated and acting in a way that we don't necessarily want to, but we're kind of at our wits' end, on the other side of that, also not taking that personally now too, and remembering that at that moment in time, we were doing the best that we could. And
Right.
yeah, so I kind of, it goes both ways too.
Just kind of comes full circle, as we
Yeah.
realize how we were impacted by our parents imposing their values, their rules on us. And we've done that to our children. And it just keeps going on and on. And how do we support our children in developing integrity instead of breaking their integrity?
Yeah. I mean, I think it starts with doing that for ourselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But how often as young moms do they get that level of training and insight? And
yeah, no, we don't.
when I was raising my children, I had none of that awareness.
Yeah. No. And I think, I shared with you on the phone the other day too, like I had my daughter when I was 24. And I can honestly say, like, I didn't even know who I was then, let alone, and, I don't have any regrets. And I think I was an amazing mom, and I still am. But
Daughter.
she's 11 now.
Okay.
But yeah, we don't necessarily have that support as young moms, and let alone really knowing how to role model and teach those certain things to our young children when we're still like discovering who we are.
Right.
So we're really kind of on a journey together with our children.
Yeah, we're all, and I think that was one of my most powerful moments as a mom and as a woman, when I realized my children they're on their own journey, and they are going to experience and make their choices and do those things for themselves. And they've reached a point where all I can do is kind of sit back and watch and want for them that genuine integrity and joy and peace. And if my children have that, then what more is there?
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with, I would rather them have that than a big fancy house and cars and stuff.
Yeah.
Have that they learn and discover. I wish I've got this. This was a plate. It was part of a tea set that was mine when I was a little girl. And I feel like this is what I did to my kids. You know, this had integrity. It was, you know, it was intact when I got it. And, you know, then it got broken. The integrity of it got broken. You can't use it now because it's in 3 pieces. You know, if I could just say to my kids, find your integrity. Find your integrity and live with that. And I kept this, I didn't throw it away because I'm going to glue it back together, but I'm going to use the Kintsugi method of fixing it. Or not fixing it, just it's the next step in its journey. Do you know what Kintsugi method is?
No, I don't.
So it's glue, but it's glue that is mixed with gold glitter.
Oh.
So the lines, the idea is not to try to hide the break, but to accentuate it, because it's now part of its history.
Yeah.
You know, so like, and I feel like that's what we all need to do is embrace our history, embrace our mistakes. We can't change them.
Right.
We can't change them if we want to. But we can learn from them and we can grow, and out of those things, beautiful things can come.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love that so much.
Yeah.
Such a great lesson for all of us.
Time. How are you for time?
I am okay. I've got another minute or so.
Okay. I just want to be mindful of your time and your starting your day.
Yeah, absolutely. I have loved being here with you this morning. I love talking with you always. But I think this is just such a great and important conversation. Yeah.
And we're going to do this every Thursday morning for at least the next 6 weeks, was our commitment to each other.
Yes.
To do this for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And then we'll see where it goes after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I hope that more people are able to watch and tune in, and I would love to hear feedback and just kind of keep this conversation going.
Yes. Because it's all about just empowering women, but empowering people.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Empowering people to empowering women to empower their children, which will change the world.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we definitely need more kindness in the world today.
That is for sure.
Yeah. So what would you like your closing word to be today?
Oh my goodness. I guess really just, I guess I would challenge women and moms to spend some time reflecting on how you are filling your cup, so to speak, and also how you're pouring from your cup. Like where is that energy in and out going? Really reflect on that and start to see kind of where that energy is coming in and where that energy is going out, and maybe where you'd like to start making some changes and adjustments to that.
So beautiful. That's so beautiful. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I look forward to chatting again next week.
Absolutely. We'll talk soon.
All right. Sounds good.